It's TK Friday and it's time for another full edit. Hello everyone and welcome to the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. Thank you for joining me again today, and I have another full edit for you. Today's image comes to us from Dave Karp, and you can download this image along with the PDF notes that go with it. I'll have Dropbox links in the description below this video. Click on more, that opens up the description, scroll down through, and you will find a Dropbox link for the PDF notes as well as the image. And give this edit a try out for yourself. If you have an image you'd like me to edit on a TK Friday, scroll down even further, you'll find a Contact Me link. Click on that link, contact me, and we can discuss doing one of your images on a TK Friday. By the way, if you don't yet own the TK9 plugin for Photoshop, I'll have a link for it in the description right below this video. You can click on that link. It'll take you over to Tony Kuiper's web store, and there you can save 15% off your entire purchase, the TK9 plugin for Photoshop training videos. Just use my promo code DK15, and that will get you 15% off your entire purchase. When you use that code, I make a small commission. You save money, so thank you for using my code and enjoy the savings. Well, let's go ahead and dive right in, and don't forget to download these PDF notes. They'll really help you out. And as always, I start out here in Lightroom and just do some really basic edits to this image. I'm using a linear profile. I want to keep the image relatively flat going into Photoshop, because there I will develop this image, and I like a nice flat image to go in, and the linear profile really helps to do that. By the way, Tony does provide free linear profiles for your cameras. You can find that link in the description below this video. Now, along with some minor adjustments, I've done a crop on this image, as you can see right here. And also for details, some noise reduction and a little bit of sharpening. And as always, I always check on remove chromatic aberrations as well as enable profile corrections. And then at this point, I just right click on the image, go to edit in Adobe Photoshop 2024, but I'm already there. I hope you're all having a great Friday, and you know what? Let's have some editing fun today. Now, the starting point for most of my edits is usually a balance and contrast adjustment, and I really like this adjustment because it helps me to really study out the image and then see where I want to go from there after this initial balance and contrast. And here's how I do it. Come up to the TK9 multi-mask panel and click on the luminosity button, and then click on midtones 3. Now, the only reason I use this is because anywhere we have intense shadows and highlights, this will protect those from getting blocked up and losing detail. So that's all I really use this for. And then I output this to a curves adjustment layer. And now you can see there's that mask on the curves adjustment layer. And I'll start out by clicking on the shadow button. And now you see this slider right here. It's a brightness slider. So what I'll do on shadows is darken the shadows. I'll drag this to the left. Now you don't see anything happening when you drag the slider until you release the click of your mouse. And I'm going to take it over here to like -25. And you see how the shadows start to darken up, and we're building up contrast in the image. And next we'll click on the midtone button. And now I just want to brighten up the midtone. So I'll take this midtone slider and drag it to the right. And you can see that curve coming up there. And I'm going to drag this over to right there, +32. Now already, if I shut this layer off, here's before and here's after. See what I mean? We're off to a good start. And now I study the image and I look for kind of issues. And if I look at this water coming down here, the top of the waterfall, I'd like to leave some of that original detail in there. So here's what I'm going to do, and only in this area right up in here. What I'll do is put this layer inside of a group so I can get another layer mask. So we'll click the right side of this button here. This gives us a group with a white mask. And now I'll click on my black brush button and add an opacity of 30%. If you don't have 30%, type your 3 key. That's a shortcut. And all I want to do is paint on this mask with black paint and reveal some of that original image through without the adjustment. Just like right up in here. You see that? I'm just bringing back some of that detail in there. I just don't want to lose that detail, just like that. And now, if I shut off this mask by clicking this X, you can see here's before and here's after. See how I brought some of that detail back? And if we want to, we can collapse this group by clicking right here. And that just gives us more space in this layer stack. Well, we're off to a good start. Now, lately I've been experimenting in the last few videos with doing a mid-tone contrast adjustment. It's a beautiful contrast only in the mid-tones. So let me show you how I do that. What we're going to do is right now my color grading tool's in the way. I'll click the X. Nothing changes on color grading layers, by the way. I'll come back and click on the luminosity button. And now we're going to click on midtones 3 again. That's a really strong midtone. We have midtones 1, 2, and 3. They get stronger as they go, but they are all midtones. See, there's midtones 2, there's midtones 1. They're all very useful, but in this case, we want midtones 3 because I want a pretty strong effect. And now we need to output this mask. I'll click on the curves adjustment layer, and all I do here is come up to the curves adjustment, come to preset, click on the drop down, and click on strong contrast, RGB, and see that very strong midtone contrast. Now that's too strong, so we could pull it back with the help of the opacity slider. And if you click right here, you'll see a slider comes up. And what I did was I drug this back to like a 43%. And now let me shut this layer off. Here is before and here's after. But isn't that beautiful? We get some pop of color, some beautiful mid-tone contrast. And then after that adjustment, the image tends to get a little darker. So what I like to do is pop up the mid-tones, brighten them up a little bit. And to do that, it's simple. Come back up to the multi-mask panel, click on the luminosity mask button, and then click on mid-tones 1, the weakest of the mid-tones, and I'll put that to any one of these adjustment layers. I always use the curves adjustment layer. It's the first one here because all I want to do is use a blend mode, and I'm just stealing that curves adjustment to add a blend mode. And I'll click on the screen blend mode button and watch those midtones lighten up. Isn't that cool? Let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here is after. And now we're really off to a good start. Now let's see what we need to do next. Now the star of this show is this waterfall. So really I want to take my viewers' eyes to the waterfall. And right now I feel like, see this pine tree here, some of the greenery up in here. It's a little too light, drawing our attention away from the waterfall. So we can darken that down, and let me show you how we can do it. This is a technique that I like to call brightness and contrast dodging and burning. Now, I did try traditional burning with the burn tool, but I wasn't happy with the adjustments. So sometimes you got to think outside the box, and I did this time, and I'm using this brightness, contrast, dodging, and burning. Here's how I do it. I come up to the multi-mask panel, and I click on the brightness, contrast adjustment. And now I'm only looking at this green tree right here. I'm going to take the brightness and drag it to the left, and I'm going to go really aggressive, and you're going to say, Dave, what the heck are you trying to do here? Well, follow it through and you will see the method to my madness. I'm taking this over to -104, and now I'm going to add contrast. I'm going to take the contrast slider and drag it to the right just to build some more contrast in there, and stop here at 19. Now I know you're saying, Dave, that is horrible, but all I'm doing is looking at this green tree. So here's what we do now. Now that we have this brightness contrast layer, we click on this black mask button and we hide it. That's the key here. We need to hide it because we will paint on the adjustment. Now, as I said, we're working with green, so we have the perfect mask creation tool up here in the multi-mask panel, and that is a color mask. And you see this button? We'll click on it and we get a color picker tool. And what I want to do is sample one of these light tones in the green areas, greenish yellow area, and click OK. And you can see how nicely we're selecting that. Now I can fine tune that by dragging this handle a little bit into the right towards green a little bit, just to tighten it up a little bit. And now what I'll do is take the brightness slider and drag it over to the right. And I'm going to take it to right about here so I can really target those areas. Now the light areas are the green areas, which will get the adjustment. We want to output that to a black layer mask, painting with a white brush through a selection. So I'm going to click this button and you'll notice the selection indicator shows me I do have a selection. And now with a 30% opacity brush, and if you don't have one, type your 3 key, and with a nice soft edge brush, and you could vary its size, we're just going to paint. Now, every time I lift the brush and paint again, we're making that a little more darker. So I am just painting over these areas and, letting my eye tell me how much I want to darken. Maybe this area I'll hit a couple extra times. In here, not as much, but in here, these got to really darken up. And remember, we're only targeting that green. I don't have to worry about getting it out into this area. I'm protected by the mask. So that's pretty good. Let me hit this a couple extra times up in here here, maybe over in here. But take your time and really study it out. Down in here, I want to darken this down. I'm going to paint over this several times just to really darken that area right down in here. I want to darken these green areas here. So I'm going to change my brush to 10% opacity. I'll type my 1 key and I'll just paint over these a few times. I don't want them to go too dark. Maybe in here a little bit, in here. And now we're going to come up into here and start painting. Now, I am lifting my brush when you see me go down again. So remember, I'm only at 10% opacity, so I'm building up the effect slowly. And you see that? And these are too light. I want to bring those down a little bit in value. And so we'll just paint over these a couple times, maybe up in here a little bit, get this again. And you know what? I just want to make sure my eye is not being drawn up to here as much. I still want these light. You know, I don't want them so light that they're pulling me away from the waterfall. And we want to train our viewer into that waterfall. And now let me shut this off. Here is before and here's after. See how we're going more to the waterfall now? Now, if we want to look at this mask, we can click this double arrow button, and you can see how we're targeting those green areas perfectly. And now if we click this button again, we can see the image back. Now, to get the viewer to further look at the waterfall, I'd like to lighten these areas of the waterfall, like from this point down to here. And for that, I'll use the left side of the dodge tool, giving me a 50% gray layer. But here's the deal. Right now, you'll notice I do have a selection. If I click the left side of the dodge tool right now, it'll throw that mask of that selection on the layer, and I don't want that. So we could click this button to deselect our selection. And now I'll click the left side of the dodge tool. Gives me a 50% gray layer overlay blend mode. If you didn't see my dodging and burning with Edit Blend Diff deep dive, go ahead and check that out. I'll link it at the end of this video for you. And now what we're going to do is click on this Edit Blend Diff button. And now we need to target that light area. So what we're going to do is try some lights. Here's lights 1. Now we don't see anything, but if I click this double arrow magenta button, we can see where lights 1 hits. But now let's try lights 2. And the magenta overlay is really hitting that waterfall perfectly. Now what we need to do is shut off the color overlay by clicking the double arrow magenta button again. And now we can do some dodging. Now what I will use is a 20% opacity brush. I'm going to type my 2 key. That gives me a 20% opacity brush. And now it's just a simple matter of painting. Now I don't want to paint up in here. It's already light. So I'm going to paint here like this, trying to miss some of the darker areas. Like here, I want to lighten this area up down in here a little bit, maybe in here. Let's make my brush a little bit smaller. We can come across here. And it's only targeting those light areas with that blend if. Down into here, we'll just lighten it up. And again, every time I lift that brush and paint again, it gets a little bit lighter. We'll come down into here, and it's only, again, targeting the light areas, which is really nice. Now, let me go ahead and shut this off. Here is before, and here is after. Now, see how nicely lit up that waterfall is? I think I want this a little lighter, so I'm going to hit this a little bit more, just right down in through here, just to give it a little extra lightness. Before I move on, I want to go back to this brightness contrast adjustment layer by clicking on it. And the thing I forgot to tell you was the beautiful thing about this brightness and contrast dodging and burning is you have these adjustments here that you, after you've already painted on the mask, you can go ahead and further, like if I wanted that tree to go darker, I could drag this brightness slider to the left and darken it up or lighten it up, whatever I wanted to do, or give it more or less contrast. Now I'm going to make the dodge layer active because we'll go on from here. Now, I'm sure some of you have noticed this light rock area and it's really drawing your eye, so we can darken that down. And we'll use that same dodging and burning with the brightness and contrast adjustment layer. I need to get to my multi-mask panel, so I'll click the X on the Edit Blend If panel, and now we can see the multi-mask panel comes back. Nothing changes on this layer concerning Blend If. Let's add a brightness contrast adjustment layer. Click this button. Let's make the adjustment. I'll start with brightness. I'm going to take the brightness slider to the left. I'm looking at those rocks up there. And I'll come over to here, -72. Now let's add some contrast. I'm going to take the contrast slider to the right over to right there, +42. So now we've darkened up those rocks, but now we're going to put a black mask to hide that adjustment. And now we need to get a mask to target that area. Now I tried a luminosity mask and I tried a zone mask, and I got a better result with the zone mask. So sometimes you need to try different masks to see which one is going to work better. I'll click on the zone mask, and now a color picker comes up, and I want to sample this tone right here, this light value. Click OK. And now I'm going to take this slider right here and see if I can get more of the area I want in all this light area. So I'm going to take this slider and drag it to the left a little bit. And what I found out was when I hit like 170, I thought that's really hitting all those areas in there. And then what I want to do is tighten that up by dragging this tighten slider into the left. And we'll take it over to about right here, I think is good. Now we can lighten it up by dragging the slider to the right a little bit. And maybe right there should be good. And now we're going to output it to a black layer mask, painting with a white brush by clicking that button. You can see our selection. We'll be painting through a selection. Now I want to paint with a 30% opacity brush. Right now I'm in 20%, as you can see. I'll type my 3 key. That's a shortcut to get us to 30%. And now with a nice soft edge brush, let's just paint over these rocks just to darken them up. Now again, when I lift that brush and paint again, every time you see me moving across that same area, I've lifted and painted again with that 30% brush. We're going to come over into here, down into here a little bit. And something like that, I think, should do the job for us. Now, let me go ahead and shut this off. Here is before and here is after. Now, don't forget, we can always come back up here and readjust the brightness, maybe make it darker or lighter, whatever you think. You have this control. It's non-destructive, pretty cool. And I think right about there should do the trick. Now you'll notice I still have a selection by this selection indicator. Let's go ahead and click this button on the combo or CX panel, and that deselects our selection. Now, as I study this image, we are drawing the viewer to the waterfall, but I think we can do better. And I did try like a freehand vignette for this next step, and I did not like the result I was getting for this. It was too, let me say, unnatural, for lack of a better word. So I'm going to do this more organically, and here's how I'll do it. I'm going to grab a curves adjustment layer by clicking this button on the multi-mask panel. I'm going to click on the black mask to hide the adjustment, and I will click on the multiply blend mode to darken everything up. And now with a nice, pretty decent size white brush, I'm going to click on my white brush. This is all going to be painted freehand. And all I want to do is, with a very low opacity of 10%, I'll type my 1 key. I'm just going to paint like areas that I feel need to be darkened down. Now that's one pass. I'm going to paint this again. I'm going to come down into here and paint on the edges here, maybe down into here somewhat, darken down here, kind of painting on my own sort of a vignette. But I'm trying to train my viewer's eye into that waterfall. So I just want to darken these areas up like this. Now, the light comes up through and out, so I want to keep these areas light up in here. So I'm going to hit this a couple times, maybe come over in here, down into here, and I think I'm going to darken this up a little bit more over in here and here. And I'm using my mouse, and what I'm doing right now with a nice soft edge brush is I'm just clicking as I come through here. I was dragging and painting, but sometimes I'll just click in a spot and darken a spot, like right here I'll click. Now let me shut this off. Here is before and here is after, but now you see how our eye really goes into that waterfall. It comes through here, up and out of the image. And what it happens to let us do is we look at the waterfall, and then we can, our eye stays pretty much in the image. We can look around the image, which is nice. We want to keep our viewer into our image for as long as we can. Let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. See how much better that is? And don't forget, if you feel the effect is too strong, click right here and the opacity slider comes up, and you could take it off the whole way and then just build it up slowly and stop at the point that you like. But I think I like it up the whole way at 100%, so that's going to be good. And now to really keep the viewer in the frame, I'm going to come to my TK actions. If your actions aren't open, click your TK button on either the combo or CX panel. Click vignette. This is a basic vignette. A Gaussian blur comes up. Just click OK. And what I'm going to do is lower the amount from 30% to 20%. Now I want to protect my darkest tones, so I'll click on the Edit Blend If button, and I will click on No Darks. One, that protects my really dark tones from getting the vignette. And now let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. So now my viewer really stays into the frame. As I study the image, I feel the overall image is a little dark, so I can do an exposure adjustment. And what I'll do, I need to get to my multi-mask panel, so I'll click the X on the Edit Blend If panel. Nothing changes on the Edit Blend If layers, and I will click on this button to give me an exposure adjustment layer, and I will click on this exposure field that highlights it, hold my shift key down, and I'm going to click my up arrow as I'm holding my shift key down 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, and 5 times. I think that's too much. I'm going to go down to 3/10 of a stop. I click that down arrow 1 more time. And then the other thing I want to do is go to gamma correction. This kind of acts like the mid adjustment on a levels adjustment, kind of lightens up the midtones or darkens the midtones. So if I click on this field to make it active, and what I want to do is take my down arrow key, and that'll move this slider to the right. I'm going to click it 1 time. This darkens down the midtones a little bit. Here's 2 times. Here's 3 times. Here's 4. Here is 5. Here is 6. I think I'm going to stop there at 6. I might come back up to exposure now and click this field and hold my shift key down. And let's go up another 1/10 of a stop. We're at 3/10 of a stop. Let me go 1 more time. Here's 4/10 of a stop. And let me go 1 more time. Here's 5/10 of a stop. And I think that looks really good. Let me shut this off. Here's before and here's after. Now, let me give you a really great tip. You see this button on the combo. You also find it on the CX panel. It's a live clipping button. I'm going to click it. And look, see the red there? That means I'm clipping highlights. So here's what we'll do. Let's click on our exposure layer to make it active. Click on the Edit Blend If button and watch that red as I click on No Lights 1 and it goes away. You see that? And if I click on No Lights 2, it tames the whites down even more, brings a little more detail right up in there. So now if I disable this, you can see all that clipping. And now if I enable Blend If, now that looks so much better. So I'm going to click the X to shut off Edit Blend If, but nothing changes on the layer. To get rid of the live clipping layer, just click this button again and it goes away. But that is a really great tool for checking for clipping. It'll show you shadow clipping. They'll be in blue overlay and highlight clipping in red overlay. So there's no clipping on this image whatsoever. 2 more steps and we are done. Now I'm looking down here. This is paying attention to details. You see this dirt down in here, the orange brown area. I think it's a little oversaturated, so we could take care of that. Let's come to the multi-mask panel, click on our color mask button and sample some of these orangish brown tones right here. Click OK. And then I just want to lighten that up by dragging this brightness slider to the right a good bit over to like right about here. See how we target these tones. And then what we'll do is we'll do a mask the mask. Grab your lasso tool, just click on your lasso tool. And what I want to do is kind of like drag right around this area, right like so. It grabs that area and then click the mask button. And now we select that area. And I want to increase the Gaussian blur radius to give me a nice smooth edge on there. And I'm going to take it up to somewhere like right around there. See how it just smooths out the edge, blends it really well. I'll click OK. And now we just need to output this to a hue saturation adjustment layer. So we will click this button right here. And now we have that mask. And all we need to do at this point is pull down the saturation. Now look at this area right here. That's the only area that will be affected. I'll pull down the saturation just to make that look better. And I'll take it down a good bit. And I think to maybe right about there. Now let me shut off this layer. Here's the before and here's the after. Now one final step, I want to bring out some detail in the waterfall only, and here's how we'll do it. We'll use the help of Adobe Camera Raw. Hold your Command or Control key down and click this button here. It stamps all your layers together and gives you a smart object. And then click on your ACR button, which in turn sends us into the Camera Raw filter. We want to bring out some textures in this waterfall, so click on Effects. That opens up your effects. And what we want to do is take our texture and look at the waterfall. I'm going to take my texture up a good bit, up to like right there, plus 73. And now I want to work with clarity, and I'll take the clarity slider and drag it to the right over to right there, plus 34. Now I know the rest of the image is not good, but not a problem. Just click OK. Remember, it's a smart object, so we can come back in here and adjust this camera raw filter anytime we want. We want to hide this adjustment. How could we hide it? Well, click the black mask button, and now we hide the adjustment. And now with a white brush, click on your white brush button, and you want 100% opacity, type your 0 key, get you 100% opacity. And now all we want to do is, with a nice soft edge, smaller brush, let's just paint detail on our waterfall, just like so. In these areas in here, I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller, and we'll paint some detail in here, back in here, over here, down in here. Let's come down into this area here and paint in some detail. Isn't that cool? Even down in here a little bit. Some of that splashing is happening even down here. And I think we're going to be pretty good with that. Now let me go ahead. Let me shut this off. Here is before and here is after. And we bring out some nice detail in the waterfall. Now let's see where we've come from on my combo or your CX panel. Click this button. It's the before after button. We started out here, and now we end up here, and I'm really happy with this edit, and I do hope you download the PDF notes in the image and give this edit a try. I think it'll really help you out. Well, there it is, everyone. Another TK Friday comes to a close. I hope you enjoyed today's full edit. If you enjoyed today's tutorial, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe. Click that bell notification icon. Click all so that you'll receive all notifications. And then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll get notified about it. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. And I will see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing.